I should have listened to the warnings. I should have paid attention to the stories. But I brushed them off as urban legends and tall tales meant to frighten kids around the campfire. Little did I know the horror that awaited me down that lonesome stretch of road. I should have known the moment I saw him that something was wrong. However, things were about to take a terrifying turn down a dark path I could have never anticipated. But at the time, I just thought he was being friendly. So I waved back. I was driving home from work late one night, as was typical for me as a night shift manufacturing employee. It was around 2 a.m. and the roads were fairly deserted, as you'd expect that time of morning. I was taking the rural route home to my small town, winding along back roads through dark forests and past empty fields. That's when I saw him up ahead on the side of the road, waving at me with an enthusiastic full-arm wave, like he was flagging me down. My first thought was that maybe his car had broken down and he needed assistance. So I smiled and gave a friendly wave back before slowing down, preparing to pull over. As I got closer, I could make out more details in the glow of my headlights. He was standing perfectly still, body angled forward to face my approaching car. His other arm hung limp at his side. He wasn't wearing a jacket, even though it was a brisk autumn night. I rolled down my window a crack, ready to ask if he needed help. That's when I noticed his expression. It wasn't a friendly smile or look of relief at someone stopping. His eyes were wide and vacant, mouth hanging open ever so slightly. He just stared. As I passed, my headlights illuminated his face for a split second, and I could have sworn I saw his cheeks twitch into a slight smile. But it was gone in an instant, replaced with that same eerie blankness. A shiver ran down my spine, and I quickly rolled the window back up, locking the doors. There was something deeply unsettling about this stranger, like he wasn't quite human. An unearthly presence emanating from those dead eyes and twisted grin. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but every instinct screamed at me to get away from him as fast as possible. I hit the gas, leaving the waving man behind me. The sound of my tires spinning on loose gravel filled the eerie silence surrounding my car. I stole a glance in the rearview mirror and saw him gradually shrinking into the distance, that arm still robotically waving as I sped away. A sense of dread washed over me, and I turned up the radio to drown out the uneasy quiet, trying to put the bizarre encounter out of my mind. I kept checking my mirrors constantly now, half expecting to see that ghastly figure trailing behind me. But the roads remained empty and still. Before long, I was pulling into my driveway and rushing inside, letting out a deep breath as I locked the front door behind me. I tried to convince myself I had imagined things, and it was just a strange person out for a late walk, though a nagging fear still gnawed at the back of my mind. But I couldn't shake this nagging sense of dread, like I had stumbled onto something I wasn't meant to see. Over the next few days, I found myself driving extra cautiously along that same desolate stretch of road, gripping the steering wheel tightly, eyes straining into the darkness, half expecting to see him again. At first, it was just my mind playing tricks, shadows and shapes blurring past that momentarily resembled a human figure, making my heart leap into my throat. But then he started appearing again, far off in the distance at first, just a small silhouette visible under the dim glow of the moon, waving casually, not moving, almost like some sort of mirage. Night after night it continued. He was there, clear as day now, in different spots along that same desolate road. Legs unnaturally still, torso arched forward, arm raised in that chillingly casual wave. Never approaching, never acknowledging me beyond that simple gesture, just waving, waiting. Each time I'd press my foot down on the accelerator, desperate to speed past his waving silhouette. But no matter how fast I drove, he always maintained that same maddeningly slow, casual wave. His presence seemed to leach the life and color from everything around him, shrouding that stretch of road in a cloak of dread and despair. I found myself taking longer and longer routes home, trying to avoid him. But no matter which back roads I took, that solitary shape would eventually appear. It was as if he knew my every move, the casual wave beckoning me towards some horrible destiny I could only begin to imagine. The worst was when it became clear he was moving closer to my home, night by night, getting nearer and nearer to the turnoff I took to my small rural neighborhood. One night, I even saw him at the end of my street when I pulled in, arm robotically waving as I sped past. Terror gripped me as I slammed my car door and bolted inside, locking it behind me. I frantically closed all the blinds and curtains, shutting out the night. But I could still picture him out there, slowly drifting up my driveway with that same unbroken wave. With each passing day, the dread grew more unbearable. I had horrific nightmares. I was stuck in that car on a never-ending loop, the waving man always there, no matter which way I turned, waving insistently as that vacant-eyed figure drew nearer and nearer, summoning me towards an awful fate I couldn't see, but could feel closing in all around. I awoke in a cold sweat, my sheets drenched and tangled around me like shackles. I missed days of work, stopped going out after dark entirely, shuttered all the windows and draped blankets over them for good measure, just hoping and praying this haunting would pass, that the waving man would move on and leave me be. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Sure enough, one night I was awoken by the sound of something scraping against the front door downstairs. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling, or a tree branch blown by the wind, but the noise persisted. A slow, rhythmic scraping that raised the hairs on the back of my neck. I held my breath, straining to listen. More scraping and tapping, slow and rhythmic, like fingernails or twigs being dragged along the wooden surface. It went on for what felt like hours as I lay there, petrified. Until, finally, I heard the front door unlatch and creak open. The footsteps that followed chilled me to my core. Heavy, shuffling steps at an unbearably slow pace, making their way through the house, up the stairs, down the hallway towards my bedroom. I stared in frozen terror as the shadow shifted under the crack at the bottom of the door. Suddenly, my bedroom door came crashing open, the force of the impact sending it slamming against the wall with a tremendous crash. And there he stood in the dim glow of the hallway light. A tall, arched silhouette now visible, arm raised as if in a wave. The waving man. Only now he was grinning that horrible, unnatural grin. His body was hunched forward, head sagging. He stood there for what seemed like an eternity, back arched unnaturally and arms hanging slack at his sides. That's when the smell hit me. A thick, rancid odor like decaying flesh, wafting from the man, now only a few feet away. I shrank back on my bed, bile rising in my throat. That's when the nightmares took on a new, waking form. I'm not sure what happened over the next few hours. I awoke sometime later, covered in sweat and my own blood. Just fragments and impressions. A rancid smell enveloping me, like something discarded and left to rot. I could barely move. I started dragging myself towards the window, desperate to alert someone, anyone, before it was too late. That's when I saw him again. The waving man, he was standing right outside my house, smiling that awful grin and waving casually. Only now, his gaze drifted over in my direction. His grin widened, and he let out a horrible bellowing laugh that reverberated through my bones. As everything faded to blackness, with the last of my fading strength, some animalistic instinct took over. I raised a trembling hand and waved back. I don't know how long I stood there waving ceaselessly. Only one thought persisted through my distorted, macabre existence. There would be others, and like me, they would wave back.